Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Hilchos Gezelav Aveda Perek Shloisha Asa. This chapter continues with the topic that we began in the previous chapter, which is the mitzvah of returning a lost article to its owner. And here we will be discussing how to announce, where to announce, when to announce that you found something that's lost in a way that the owner will have an opportunity to realize that he or she lost something, but you won't announce enough information. In other words, the owners will still have to give a siman. A siman means a identifying mark, which will be the way you will know that indeed it belongs to them. This chapter has 20 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph, says the Rambam. If a person finds a lost article that you are obligated to return, so how exactly do you go about returning it? You have to announce and to notify and to say the following: whoever lost that type of article, all you announce is the type, again, because if you give away too much information, a dishonest person might go and guess and get it. And you announce that person should come. V'yitin simanim should give a identifying mark, and v'yitol. Now I would like to share a few words of introduction, whether it's shared over here, whether we're going to need it more in halacha hey, which is as follows. And this will really shed a lot of clarity for those of us who make the effort to learn also these topics in the Gemara. There is a expression which is siman muvak versus a siman she'ena muvak. Muvak means it's a clear siman. It's a siman that's not vague. Now, let me actually share the following, that there are three levels to a siman, to identifying marks. There is what's eina muvak. It's not a proof at all. It's not clear. For example, if a person says, I announced, let's say I found a lost article. I found a shirt. Someone says, yeah, it's mine. It was red. It's just an example. Giving a color of an article is called a siman she'eina muvak, because it could be that the person who heard that the shirt was lost is lying. It does not belong to them. They guessed, they said red. Many articles are red or blue or whatever. And no one holds that an article should be returned based on such a siman. That's called a siman that's not muvak. It doesn't clarify anything. In the good siman and the siman muvak, really, there are two levels. There are really two levels. And let me go from the best to the intermediate. The best siman muvak as a mashal is that if someone lost a document, now like mashal today, if a get is written in one location and a beis din sends it to another location, what is done today is that in this document they make a hole on top of a letter or on top of two letters, and only the owner of the document will know that on the third line, on the fourth letter, on the gimel, raise over there on top, you have dalid, you have a hole. That is a siman muvak, which is the best type of siman. Someone says, yeah, that belongs to me, and they give such a type of sign, for sure he or she is the owner. The other lower level, we're going to call this the intermediate level of a siman muvak, will be, as the Rambam will describe later in this chapter, when you give the number. I found articles of clothing. The guy says, yeah, I lost 8 garments. Or if you give the weight, or if you give the measurement of the garments. That's not as good as giving, there's a hole on top of the letter on the third line, but it's not a siman she'ena muvak. Okay? So let's just bear that in mind. So a siman she'ena muvak for sure is not good. The highest level of a siman muvak, like the hole on top of the letter, for sure that's good. We're going to have a lot of discussion when it comes to this intermediate type of siman. Yes, Kema.
What is literal meaning of muvak?
A professional,
specific
or
professional. Oh, God.
Specific, clear siman. Okay. Now, another thing says that Rambam, if when the person lost the article, it was worth only 1 pruta. Now it's not even worth that. There's inflation. Even though now it's not worth a pruta, another din, you're obligated to make announcements. Because since when it was lost, it was worth a pruta, you're chayiv to do the mitzvah, as we learned in the previous chapter. Now, where do you make this announcement? So in the times where there was a Beis HaMikdash, one of the many advantages is that everyone, all the Jewish people gathered in Yerushalayim at least 3 times a year, which is exactly what we want. We want to make an announcement in a location where you're going to get the majority of the people, max possible. So there was actually a location, and there was the Even Gavoya, there was a tall stone, which was right outside of the city of Yerushalayim. There is where they would make an announcement. And that Even, if you remember in the Gemara, in Bava Metzia, Daf Chav Ches, is called the Even HaToyein. And whoever found something would stand on it, which means that if you lost something, you would go there to hear people make these announcements. Halacha Beis, Ketzad Machris, how is a announcement made? If you found money, Machris, you announce, Misha Avad Lemabeh, whoever lost a coin, whoever lost coins. You don't say what type of coins. You don't say the numbers of the coins. In other words, you have to give away the minimum possible, but the person who lost it has to know that you're the guy that found it. Or similarly, you make an announcement, Misha Avad, like, so whoever lost a garment or garments, or animals, or documents, should come and give simonim, should give identifying marks, v'yital and take. Now you can't say, well, if I'm going to announce that I found clothing, well, maybe a deceiver will already come and guess. We're not worried about that. Because because you won't return it unless that word muvak means distinctive. Because you only will return it if you're going to give a distinctive mark. Now, as we mentioned, in distinctive, there are 2 categories. And even category A is the best. Even B, as we'll discuss, is also sometimes good. If the owner or the alleged owner comes, and he gives marks, he gives a simon. That's not distinctive, what we call category 3. Like, for example, he gave the color. You found a clothing, I lost it, they were all blue. Even if they're all blue, you don't give it back to them. Until he gives distinctive marks. Now the Rambam adds another layer. Even when it comes to distinctive marks, if a person is known to be a deceiver, because some people get good at it. You know, they're like the psychics, they start throwing out these statements and they reel you in. So if someone is known to be a deceiver, you don't give it back to him. The only way he'll get it back is to bring witnesses. Now you have to add on top of that. Where does that come from? When it says in Parshas Kiseitze that the lost article should remain with you until your brother seeks it out. The pshat is your brother will seek it out by giving simanim, muvakim, by giving distinctive marks. That's the pshat. The Chazal, they expound and they say the opposite. You, the finder, you have to inquire whether the person is honest. You have to make an investigation regarding the brother, regarding the person that's claiming that it's his. Now, halacha daled, based on that, but initially, whoever lost an article above and he comes and he gives distinctive marks, you would give it to him. We learned that if a person is known to be a deceiver, you may not. Well, the presumption was a person is not a deceiver. In other words, the person was actually innocent until proven guilty. However, says the Rambam that at a certain point in history, Chazal felt that most people are not honest when it comes to these financial claims, and therefore they said, they made a takana. They made a takana the opposite, that even when anyone who comes first has to bring witnesses from people that we already know are honest, that he is also honest. The Edom obviously don't prove that he's the owner, but a person now has to bring witnesses that can attest to his character. And only then is he qualified to give Simanim Muvakim. Like we mentioned, it's even the intermediate types of distinctive marks. So we do rely on them. The Don and Alpiyam, and we give a rule based on it. What is called this Siman Muvak? Even giving the measurement of the article or the weight of the article or the number of the article or the location of where one lost it are all, and they're not the greatest level of distinctive marks, but they are good enough. If 2 people come, now it gets funny. Now it gets fun. One guy gives some money aved. He gives distinctive marks. So the other guy claims that no, he is the owner. and he also gives distinctive mark. What do you do? And even if one comes a long time after the other, you just didn't give it back to the first guy yet. Now, when the first guy came in your mind, you're going to give it back to him. One might think, since you already decided to give it back to Reuven, even though Shimon now comes with other Simanim Muvakim or the same Simanim Muvakim, maybe it's too late. Not that way. Now each one cancels each other out.
And what about their characters? Don't we look into that secondly?
In other words, the Rambam is already going based on the fact that each one already brought witnesses that are attesting to the good character. Now, obviously, one of them are liars. But what do you do? So the din is lo yit and lo lezer. You don't give it not to one nor to the other. What do you do? It should stay with you until one person owns up to his fellow, because each one knows they're not going to get it. Or if no one is admitting that he's lying, then they will make a compromise, because not getting it is worse than getting half of its value. What happens if one person gives distinctive marks, but the other person actually brings witnesses that it belongs to him? So the rule is, witnesses are always considered the better level of proof. Next scenario, each one gives identifying marks, but one of them has one witness that it belongs to him. So you might think that now the one witness together with the simanim makes him more qualified. Says that Rambam doesn't work that way. One witness in financial matters is nothing. We discount it. So you go back to the beginning of Allah Chavav. Two people give simanim. One cancels the other one out. So therefore, and it should stay by you, like we mentioned, until either one admits or they make a compromise. Halacha 7, if you found a garment, one person brings witnesses that this garment was woven for him. Reuven brings witnesses that it was woven for him. Now, Shimon brings witnesses that it fell from his possession. Here, whenever you have these types of witnesses, they don't even contradict each other, because they're both true. It was woven for the Reuven. It was made for the Reuven. And obviously, at some point, Reuven sold it to Shimon. Reuven gifted it to Shimon. You understand? So therefore, we give it back to Shimon. What happens if one brings, if one comes with a simon by telling you the measurement of its length, the other one gives its measurement of width. Here, the Rambam begins to say that even in the intermediate category of simanim muvakim, you have simanim that are better than the other. And therefore, whenever you have both two people giving different simanim, whoever gives better simanim will get it. That's going to be the premise of many halachas right now. So that we say that it's harder for a deceiver to estimate the length. It's easier the width. It's easier the width. And therefore, you give it to the person who gave the midah of the length. Because it's possible that someone who's a deceiver should estimate as a deceiver the midah of the length, of the width, because he saw the owner wearing it, and therefore it's lesser of a simon. Give it to the one who has the better simon. Yeah.
How many times does one person get to guess? Let's say he says it's 10 centimeters.
One time. Not a guess. One time. Yeah. Now, but one person gives the length and the width, and the other person gives its weight. Weight is even a better sim. So you give it to the person who gave shekiv and mishkala. If one person gives the midah of the length and the width, and the other person gives the measurement of the imroyoy shaba, of the fringes. Fringes is something that is the easiest. If someone is a deceiver, to look at the fringes and those fringes, I know they're like the 5 centimeters. So therefore, you give it to the person who gave the measurement of the width and the length. Whoever finds something, as we already mentioned, that there was the stone outside Yerushalayim, how often would they have to come and announce? They would have to go there and announce it after each of the 3 Yomim Tovim. Shalosh Regalim. Now, not on the order of Pesach, Shavua, Sukkot. Let's say I found something now, right? We're learning this in the month of Menachem Av. So the closest Yom Tov for me is Sukkot. So I would have to announce. I would have to announce it Sukkot, Pesach, and Shavuos. And by the first of my 3, I would announce this is my first announcement. Second Yom Tov, I have to announce this is my second announcement. On the third, I wouldn't give a number. I would say stam. Why? Because maybe if I would say 3, someone will hear 2. Best way is not to say anything. That's clear that if you don't give a number, it means it's the final time. Now, after the final time, then what? You have to wait 7 days and go again for the final and 4th time on the 7th day from the final Yom Tov. What's the magic of 7 days? Because if someone hears it now for the first time, that they knew they lost a shirt, and now they're hearing someone saying that they found it, they'll have in 7 days enough time, even if they live 3 days away. Now, of course, they can live farther, but it ain't no davar soif. 3 days to go home, to make sure that indeed, did they lose it, did they not lose it? 3 days to come back. And then they have that final day to come the final time. Now, all of this is good when the temple is standing. So therefore, that Evan Hatoyin is taka in the most central location, and whoever makes an announcement is reaching the majority of the Jewish people. But after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, they made a takana that where should these announcements take place? In the synagogues, in the houses of study. That's where the most of the people congregate. Now comes another level of golus. What's the other level of golus? That many governments made a decree, which is halachically not okay, that any lost article belongs to the government, belongs to the king. And people in the shul would side with that law. So people would announce it in the government. Someone would listen to it. A masur. He would tell the government, someone found something, and the government would collect it. So when many people that were dishonest became too many, and they said that any lost article should go to the melech. So they made a takana that don't announce it so publicly. You announce it only to your friends and to the people that you know. Now, halacha yud is very important. Halacha yud goes both on halacha tes and on halacha ches. Don't think that after you did your part of announcing it, if no one came, it belongs to you. It does not work that way. Here is if you made these announcements and you made these notifications, if at the end of the day, no one came to claim it, it doesn't mean it's yours. If the owner was not miyayesh, it's not yours. So it's amazing. You have a mitzvah and an obligation to watch it. And as we learned, to Shomer Aveda, that Rambam Paskins writes the Machlekes Rabba Rabbi Yosef, you have a din of a Shomer Sachar. You're highly responsible. You have to keep it until Aliyah Navi comes. And as long as this lost article is under your possession, if it was stolen or if it was lost, you're chayiv and achrayis if the owner eventually comes to claim it. However, if you lost it because of forces completely beyond your control, by Yenoinis you're potter. As the Rambam says here and many other places, that a shomer aveit is a shomer sachar. Why are you a shomer sachar? You're not getting paid. And the logic is, mepneishu oisik b'mitzvah v'niftam mikam mitzvahs. I say, kozman shu oisik b'shmirasa. This amazing concept that oisik b'mitzvah patam in a mitzvah. Which means that when you're watching the lost article, obviously, if you're watching it, as we'll see soon, and you're not actively watching it, you're not exempt from anything. But there are times that someone who found a lost article has to do things to give maintenance to that article. And while I'm occupied in doing whatever we'll see in a moment, if at that moment a poor man comes and he asks you for help, you don't have to help him because you're doing the mitzvah of Shomer Aveda. So therefore, you got out of the obligation of giving tzedakah. Somehow that's considered you're getting paid. And since you're getting paid, you have a din of a shomer sachar.
When do we say if he gives up? All right, we don't say if he gives up, it's no longer.
No. If we know the owner gave up, when we know that, then you get to keep it. But we don't know that. Halacha yudal. You have to pay attention to the lost article for it not to get ruined or for it not to get lost by itself. And that's the meaning of the pasuk in Kiseitze. And you shall return it to him. These words are superfluous. Chazal tell us it doesn't mean you should return it to him. We already said that. It means you should see to it that when you return it to him, it's intact. For example, if you find a ksushal something, if you find a woolen garment has to be shaken out once in 30 days. If not, it's going to get the ruined quicker. Don't shake it using a staff. Don't shake it using 2 people. Shake it out. Another day. If you want to spread it out on a bed for it to air out, only do it for its own benefit. Not since I have to spread it out, I might as well do it at a time that I need to cover the bed anyway. You may not take any benefit from it. Even if the garment is also being benefited by the fact that it's being spread out. For example, another din that if you have guests in your house, and you want to then spread it out for the benefit of the garment. with no benefit for you, you also may not do it. Why not? Because when guests come, you don't always know the honesty of your guests. If they're going to see someone else's lost article, they might covet it. They might come and steal it. So you can't even do that. You have to be very careful to make sure no one knows exactly what you have, who you have, because you're chayv on your neighbor. Halacha your base. What's a kliyates? If you find a wooden utensil, mishtamish ben, you should use it. Kedei shelo yeir kavu, for it not to rot. Amazing. In other words, using a wooden article is good for its owner. It's good for the article. If you find a copper utensil, you should only use it for heat, but don't use it with fire. Because if you use it on fire, it's going to become worn out. If you find silver utensils, you can only use it with cold. You can't even use it for hot. Why? Because it becomes discolored. But you know that silver oxidates. If you find the rakes or hatchets, then you can only use it for things that are soft. You cannot use it for things that are hard. Why? Because it deteriorates it. If you find the golden utensils, if you find if you find glass utensils, or if you find garments made out of linen, then you can't even touch it. Can't even touch it. If it doesn't need for you to use it, then you can't use it at all. By the way, the same thing is, if you became a custodian, that means someone gave you an article for you to watch over, and the owners traveled and they didn't return. You don't know when they're returning. You're chayiv to do all of the above to make sure that when they finally come to claim it, you give it back to them intact. Halacha Yud Gimel, if you find books, scrolls. Again, a scroll that's never opened will get ruined. So you can learn from it only once in 30 days. And if you don't know how to read, roll it once in 30 days. When you know how to read, never learn a topic from it for the first time, because when you learn something for the first time, you spend a lot of time, you start pointing, you go back, you go forth. It's also going to deteriorate it, or it's going to wear it out. Other than even when you read something, not for the first time, don't read it twice. Read a little bit here, read a little bit there. Don't read a parsha and interpret it. And any type of learning that will keep you too much time in one column is not good. And when you open it up, don't open it up more than 3 columns. Might rip. Don't have 2 people reading in 2 different topics, because one guy will schlep it to his direction. The other guy that's reading a couple of columns ahead will schlep it in their direction. And the sefer is going to get rubbed out. But they could read one topic. But 3 people may not even read of the same topic. Again, because it's possible that will cause for the scroll to tear. Halacha Yudalit, if a person finds tefillin. Now, the amazing thing about tefillin is that tefillin is something that's easy to appraise and it's easy to repurchase. Using tefillin wears it out a little bit. So the best thing for the owner is that get an independent party to evaluate the value of the tefillin. Let's say today it's going to cost $1,000. You put aside the $1,000. If the owner comes later and he gives some money, give him the $1,000. The owner won't mind, because he can easily use the $1,000 to buy another pair of tefillin. Everyone is able to buy tefillin, and they're only made for their mitzvah. And therefore, again, we don't. On one hand, you're going to use. I'm sorry.
This is after the. This is after the.
This is after you gave 100%. Yes, very good. Halacha 15. If they find a living item, you find an animal, so you have to feed it. But it costs you money to feed it. So it goes like this: if it's an animal, you have to feed it, but it also produces. For example, a cow, a donkey. So even though you're going out of pocket and feeding it, but you're getting the benefit of the work that it's doing. So there we say, you have 12 months, but not from the 4th time, from when you found it. During those 12 months, you have to keep it. And you rent it out, and you rent it out. And the money that you get from the rental should be used for feeding it. Now, obviously, you have to keep an accounting, just to make it clear, because if there was more income than the food, you'll have to give that money back to the owner. It could also be that there's more food than the income, but it will be a small amount of money, and you'll deal with that with the owner. But Chazal felt that it's okay to burden you for 12 months, because more or less you're covered. And it could even be you're covered plus. But And once, I take back. If the income was more than the food, then no, I said correct. Then you have to give that money back to the owners. If you find chickens don't work, but chicken lay eggs. So that's good. So you sell the eggs, and that's the money that you use to feed them for 12 months. Beyond 12 months, mikan ve'elach, sham demeyen olav, you are allowed, and therefore you should appraise it. You designate that appraised money for the owners if they ever come to claim it, and then the chickens are yours. The 1 second, no. And from now on, they are yours and the owners in partnership. It was very common in the times of Chazal that people that own animals but didn't have the time or the know-how of taking care of it would give it to a party to take care of, and they would make a deal. Right now, it's worth $100. You take care of it for the next 5 years. Whatever increase happens from this flock will be divided 50-50. So for the first 12 months, there's no such a thing that can be made. But from then on, the Rambam is not saying to sell it. By animals, since they produce money, and they also can have children. So make that appraisal. And then what the Torah says, you and the owners become partners in all of the profits. Appraisal. If you find calves or ponies, Shalai means that they are in the pasture, which means, just to make it clear, they are still too young for labor. So they need to eat, but they don't produce. So that's not fair to say you found it, you have to guard it for 12 months. On the other hand, we want you to guard it for a certain amount of time. How much time did Chazal say? 3 months. The shel bria means healthy, not healthy that it can produce. Healthy means you have to give it a lot of food. Guy says, I can't do it for 3 months. It's not giving me any income and it's eating a lot. So then Chazal said 30 days. And again, after 30 days, you make an appraisal. And then all of the profit from then on is 50-50. Avaz and geese, v'tanagolim and roosters, gedolim, you have to understand, right? Big difference. Chickens lay eggs, not roosters. So here, you only have to guard it for 30 days. That's if they're big. If you found small ones, anything that even though it brings some income, but the money that you have to spend is more than the income, then only 3 days. Gavaldik. It's every category the Torah gives you a certain amount of time. And after that, you sell them in Beis Din. Here you sell them, not you make evaluations and you split the profit. Anytime you find something that's ruining, like produce is beginning to ruin, right away sell it in the Beis Din because the owner wants you to sell it. It's not, well, they'll come back, it's going to be rotten. And again, we quoted Bahashi Boy Soloi that we have to return it intact. What should you do with the money in the cases where you're allowed to sell it? So the Rambam paskins that the one who found it can even use that money as a loan. And if he wants, he can use it. So it's advantageous, but now, like anything else, a benefit comes with responsibility. Since the Torah says you can use it, even if you didn't, you're chayiv, even if an oinus happened. Even in Nemtzu, like happened. A bandit stole it from you, or there was a sweeping river that unbeknownst and unable for you to stop it, swept it away. You have to pay, and that's even if you didn't use the money, because once the Torah gives you permission to use it, now you become like a shoyel. And as we learned, a shoyel, unlike a shomer sacher, is not only chayving in Erev Aveda, but also chayv on a oinus. This is gavaldik. Halacha yutches the medvaram amurim. Money received for the sale of a lost object. Again, even though you didn't use it, since the Torah allows for you to use it, you then become like a shoyel, hoyel ben a tapelba. But if you find money itself, money may never be used as a loan. The money, if you found money, you're not allowed to touch it. So that's disadvantageous as far as you cannot use it as a loan. But it is good for you that if there was an oinus, you're pated. Taka that Rambam already paskened in this chapter that a moit shomer aveda is a shomer sacher, but a shomer sacher is taka chayv an geneva aveda more than the shomer chinam, but the shomer sacher is not chayv an oines. Shareyu shomer sacher, as we just said, Allah yutes kol lois and ayamin. All of these days, shenatapu aveda, that you have to occupy yourself taking care of this lost article prior to being sold in a Beis Din. If you gave it out of pocket, like we mentioned, sometimes you ended up spending more than the income. So then the owners owe you that money. Now comes a kasha. What happens? So, you rented it out. The guy came at 8 months into it. You ended up bringing in $1,000. You're claiming that you spend $1,100. The owner says, how do I know that you spend $1,100? I have to pay, normally at least take an oath. Chazal made a takana, you shouldn't even have to take an oath. You know what? Because if I, to claim my money, will have to take an oath, I'm not going to spend the money. I'll say, let the animal die. It's better for everyone. The final halacha, a person finds a lost article, b'chlal, in general, yeshava. It's b'chlal, it can happen. The original owner claims what you gave to me is not in its totality, right? You gave it back to me, shkoyach to you, you're honest, but you kept something, I lost more than what you returned. Here also, the finder never has to swear. Because if you'll have to swear, he won't even pick it up. And even if he found, for example, a wallet, and the Bala Metzia claims, you gave me back one, I lost two, and they were bound one with the other. Where's the other one? And there's no way that you found one without the other because they were tied together. Even in such a case, like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Sugi and Gittin Dash and Aleph, and all of that is because.
Question: Rabbi, do you have the chiyuv to pick up a lost item with this level of responsibility?
Yes, that's what we began. That was the whole beginning of the halacha of Perek Yud Beis. And the Torah says the person will say, "Why do I need that? I know. What are you? You're doing a mitzvah. That's the mitzvah."
Right.
Because you don't.
And also, what about the cost of accounting? You're working. You're keeping all these accounts. There's a cost for that. That's the pshat that you cheshbon it with the income. And like we said, okay. if it with extra money, he owes it. If you got extra money, you have to give it back to the owner. God willing to be continued. Rabbi Zajac, thank you.